President, I'm here today on the Senate floor for Time to Wake Up, speech number 253. If you felt like the heat this summer was particularly brutal, you were not imagining things. July was the hottest month ever recorded, according to NOAA. The Secretary General of the World Meteorological Association noted, July has rewritten climate history with dozens of new temperature records at the local, national, and global level. NOAA says 2019 is on track to tie for the second hottest year on record. Overall, the past 5 years are expected to take the title of the hottest 5-year period in recorded human history. This rapid heating of our Earth is wreaking havoc on our environment and public health. Here's a list from NOAA that you can find on their website, selected significant climate anomalies and events, July 2019, all around the globe. In one day, the Greenland ice sheet lost 12.5 billion tons of ice melted into the sea. Throughout the world, from France to India to the Arctic Circle, temperature records shattered. On July 4th, the people of Anchorage, Alaska, experienced their first ever 90-degree day. At one point in July, excessive heat warnings asked nearly 170 million Americans to avoid the outdoors and take shelter in air conditioning where available. According to Deke Arndt, head of climate monitoring for NOAA, these record heat waves are, and I quote him here, almost entirely due to climate change, end quote. Jack Williams, a professor with the Center for Climatic Research at the University of Wisconsin, told NBC News, and I quote him here, heat waves of today are going to be the normal events of tomorrow. And where there's heat, there's apt to be fire. In the United States, wildfires rage on a remarkable scale. According to a new report by the major data analytics company CoreLogic, over 8.7 million acres burned in the United States in 2018. That is about the land area of the 75 largest cities in the United States combined. This summer, the Arctic experienced a record-setting wildfire season. Places that have not traditionally burned in parts of northern Canada, Alaska, Greenland, and Siberia were engulfed in flames visible from space. In this map, the North Pole is about here. So this looks down at Alaska here and Russia here, the Siberian Arctic. And as you can see, fires were everywhere. Guillermo Rain of Imperial College London told Wired, I quote him here, Arctic fires are rare, but they're not unprecedented. What is unprecedented is the number of fires that are happening. Never before have satellites around the planet seen this level of activity, end quote. As of August 28th, fires cut across more than 6 million acres of Siberian forest and 2.5 million acres of Alaskan tundra and forested land. These forests aren't just scarring the Arctic landscape, they're also releasing tons more of carbon dioxide, causing more climate change. Researchers estimate that the Arctic fires have released more than 180 million tons of CO2. For comparison, my home state of Rhode Island was responsible for around 9.75 million tons of carbon dioxide through our fossil fuel combustion in 2016. So, roughly 20 times as much just from these fires. NASA scientists are also tracing soot from these fires. The soot absorbs sunlight and it warms the atmosphere, and when the soot settles and covers Arctic ice, it absorbs more sunlight and speeds up the melting and the warming. Once these forces are set in motion, the vicious cycle of warmer temperatures, wildfires, ice melt, and then ever warmer temperatures is hard to break. Far from the Arctic, fires rage in another iconic ecosystem, the Amazon. So far this year, the Amazon region has seen over 40,000 fires. Unlike the Arctic, our changing climate is less to blame for the devastation than humans. Again, natural forest fires in the Amazon are rare, but warmer and drier conditions under climate change do make the fires larger and longer lasting than in the past. But the true culprit in Brazil is man-made deforestation, accelerating under the new Brazilian president. Enforcement against illegal logging and clearing has declined. In the first 6 months of this year, over 13,000 square miles of Amazon forest were destroyed in Brazil, sometimes at a rate of more than 3 football fields worth of forest per minute. The journal Science Advances warns that deforestation in the Amazon is close to a threshold, beyond which the rainforest will undergo irreversible changes. Without the healthy forests of the Amazon, the world will lose one of its most important terrestrial carbon sinks, areas that naturally absorb carbon from our atmosphere. The Amazon captures about 5% of annual global carbon dioxide emissions. A 2015 study published in Nature shows that the amount of carbon dioxide the Amazon absorbs is already falling, has fallen since the 1990s by nearly a third. And in Brazil, the air has gotten so thick with smoke that in Porto Velho, a city in the upper Amazon basin, over 400 children landed in a local hospital with respiratory problems in the first 3 weeks of August. Public health officials and resources are overwhelmed. A pediatrician in Porto Velho said, "Every year we have some fires and issues with smoke, but this was the worst year of them all." End quote. The tragedy in Brazil is reminiscent of forests burning in Southeast Asia to make way for palm oil plantations. Sumatra, Borneo, and parts of Malaysia saw over 70% of their peat forest lost to man-made deforestation. In Indonesia, nearly 106,000 acres burned in just the first 5 months of this year. I'm from the ocean state. Wildfires, of course, don't burn in the ocean, but unprecedented heat waves are surging through our seas, laying waste to coral reefs in much the way wildfires ravage forests. The harm to the Amazon rainforests and to the Arctic steppes from wildfire finds an aquatic echo in the death of the Great Barrier Reef and reefs all over the world from climate-driven, unprecedented ocean heat waves. And Mr. President, our willful blindness to these obvious calamities playing out on God's earth, which are largely due to malign influence from the fossil fuel industry and its great armada of front groups that it uses to do its dirty business needs to stop. The willful blindness has to come to an end. From the equator to the Arctic, an Earth aflame will have life-or-death consequences for generations to come. Even our news media are turning their collective backs. In late August, as these fires raged, Media Matters chronicled that not one of the 5 influential Sunday news shows covered it. They're basically political gossip shows. Indeed, Media Matters showed cable news devoted to wildfires in the Amazon only 7% of the time they devoted to the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. In other speeches, I've pointed out how the royal baby has swamped climate coverage in our pathetic media. Whether in Indonesia or Brazilian rainforest or Arctic tundra, the costs of the corporate greed and paid-for political ignorance that is stopping us from acting are on full display. Our planet suffers as a consequence. We avert our eyes in the pursuit of cheap fossil fuel, but nothing comes without a cost, and our debt is coming due. Pope Francis drove home this point in a recent Sunday address, saying, and I quote, "We have caused a climate emergency that gravely threatens nature and life itself, including our own." End quote. Mr. President, our world is on fire. I'm sorry to quarrel with Billy Joel, but this time we did start the fire. And if that can't get the attention of my colleagues in Congress, I do not know what can. We must wake up. I yield the floor.